welcome back to Shit Creek Survivors, where we share stories of resilience and tools for resilience. I'm your host, Cameron McKay, and today we're talking about how to keep paddling when life knocks you off course. My guest, Adam W. Barney, is going to share his story of loss, growth, and the kind of resilience that only comes from walking through the fire. Let's get into it. Today's guest is Adam W. Barney, a resiliency coach, speaker, and author of Make Your Own Glass Half Full, the path to empowered optimism and autonomy. After losing his mom to ALS, Adam turned his grief into purpose, creating tools and systems to help people not just bounce back, but bounce forward. He's coached hundreds of leaders and business owners across the country, blending honesty, humor, and hope to make resilience something real and practical. Adam, welcome to Shit Creek Survivors.
Thank you, Cam. I'm excited to be here as a survivor.
Oh, I feel honored to have you on here. I know you got a lot of great stuff to share, but before we get going, can you kind of share with us kind of who you are and where you came from?
Sure. So I'm a 43-year-old white male who lives in the Boston area with 2 young kids and 2 dogs. That's ultimately where I come from. But as Cam mentioned, when I'm an energy coach, and when people usually hear that, they actually think I'm going to tell them to drink more water, buy a Peloton, just manifest good vibes, right? Like, there in terms of, the resiliency required, if we could just wave a magic wand to solve for the things that we experience, the trauma that we experience, that would be incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
But that's not the way the world works. That's not me.
Mm-hmm. Right. Awesome. And so you basically, one of the first things I noticed is that you went through a bit of trauma kind of earlier on, losing your mom. And that must have been such a hard process. And I don't really want to bring up bad stuff, but could you kind of explain that process to anyone who is not familiar with a family member or friend having ALS and kind of the care it takes to continue on?
So it was an incredible experience, but it was also a heartbreaking experience, right? It made me realize that I wasn't just up a creek and didn't have a paddle. I had a leaky boat. I had maybe a broken compass, and I had a corporate badge that meant nothing really when that experience came across my plate. And
Right.
truly, the journey started with loss. My mom was diagnosed with ALS. It was bulbar onset ALS.
Okay.
Which, just for people who maybe don't understand, ALS typically starts in the fingertips and the toes. This instead is a version that starts in swallowing and breathing. So bulbar set ALS. My mom was someone who always loved to learn, always loved to talk, communicate, have fun, go out and get a good meal, have a good drink. That was always a part of what drove her. So when I started watching her, fade physically and lose the ability to go out to eat, lose the ability to speak, that was an incredibly difficult experience. She lost her ability to learn.
Mm-hmm.
She actually, Cam, she ended up being diagnosed and passing away in a very short time period for people who have ALS. It was only about a calendar year from that diagnosis to her losing her.
Yeah.
And but I could see her spirit was still alive, even though it was the most brutal thing that I had ever experienced up to that point. It was a beautiful thing to see that spirit didn't die.
Yeah.
We didn't have enough time. There are lots of fantastic eye tracking computers out there where people can use eye movement to type now. She got one. She hated it. She got rid of it. So when she lost the ability to speak, I would recommend actually anyone out there, hop on Amazon. I'm not going to push people to Amazon and Jeff Bezos's world fully. Look for what's called a boogie board. A boogie board, my kids have it. It's an incredible tool that is a erasable a few thousand times writing tablet that you could write on. So my mom had that as one of her tools in her toolbox. She could still be involved in the conversation, even though she couldn't speak. Yeah. She could write and respond to people in the room. That actually led me, though, to a place where I knew she could still type on a computer. Mm-hmm. And I started this series with her across email that I called Mommeries. And I have about a dozen of these sitting in my email. I don't reference them too frequently because this all happened coming up on 11 years ago.
Okay.
But that was a system that I brought into play where I could ask my mom, as she lost the ability to speak and communicate, a question about her upbringing or, her experiences in life that I had never asked her previously.
Hmm.
And I could get a very thoughtful response that I could keep in perpetuity to learn from. Digital tools are incredibly, incredibly powerful.
Awesome.
Think about with the smartphones we have now in our pocket today, how many more photos you have available to yourself. It allows us to
Right.
capture very, very easily these memories and these experiences to keep in our back pocket that keep us going.
Yeah.
But even outside of that path of loss, um, I had two things happen that never would have been unlocked had I not gone through that series of loss. The first one was getting involved with a incredible, incredible familial ALS program out of the University of Miami. They have an incredible neurological unit there in Miami, Florida.
Great.
And I've been now part of that that learning platform and being a participant in that study for the last 10 years. I
Wow.
never would have found out about that. I mean, who in Boston wouldn't want to go to Miami in the middle of the winter? But
Yeah.
at the same time, it opened up an incredible opportunity. And ever since I joined that, Dr. Michael Benatar has actually been recognized as the world's preeminent ALS researcher, and he's the one who created this program down there. The other door that it opened was getting involved more locally here in Boston with the ALS TDI, Therapy Development Institute.
Okay.
And, that's the only focused ALS solution organization in the world. They're famously credited with starting the Ice Bucket Challenge.
Oh, really?
And we've become involved with that. It's opened up doors. And then even more than those two big things, I realized someone I worked with in my corporate days at Microsoft went to Boston College with Pete Freites, who also was involved with creating the Ice Bucket Challenge.
Very
It
cool.
opened me up. I talk about in my book one of the hundreds of thousands of stories out there in the world where people used optimism and autonomy to face a challenge and not just fall down and not get up again, because
Right.
that's when you start to atrophy. 80 Barkin. 80 Barkin was an incredible, also someone who was afflicted with ALS here in the US, but a patient, he went into patient advocacy. He was really helping not just with ALS, making sure that people facing these challenges aren't just left to themselves, because what helps bring it together? Community is such a big piece of it. And
Oh,
then
yeah.
fast forward even more acutely, I have two young daughters. Our first daughter met someone at a playground in our neighborhood. We became friends immediately. We both had dogs. The dogs got along. We've become very good friends with our friends Lee and Lori, and they have two kids. I my Had I not lost my mom and faced that neurological challenge, these intersections would have never come up. They
Right.
opened up these doors. They had a second kid, and she's an incredible kid who was diagnosed. Her name is Noah, with Canavan disease. This is one of the ultra rare neurological diseases in the world.
I've
They
never
became
heard of it. Yeah.
it's there are probably a dozen kids in across the planet who have this disease. The typical way that it works is you've got about 7 years of life for that kid to be alive.
Oh,
It's pretty much unfortunately it's a death sentence in that ultra rare disease category.
yeah.
She was lucky enough, because of her incredible parents and the incredible community that they assembled, to receive a dose of gene therapy, and that has changed the game. She's now able to walk.
Whoa.
Canavan kids aren't able to walk. She's able to communicate. She was in our swimming pool in our backyard this summer. It's incredible to see what doors, but it's also led me to be incredibly empathetic to our friends who are facing the same sort of set of challenges. And the brain is a funky thing, right?
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
weaves into how we lift ourselves out. But neurological experiences have intersected in my life in so many different ways. Had I not faced that with my mom, would I have ever seen that? Would I like
Right.
to think about this scam in the way of, imagine you're on a street and you've got a street light above you. The street light has a stream that's this wide.
Yeah.
You see the things that are in the street light. If something is in the dark, even 6 inches out of that street light, you're not going to identify it. You're not going to see that it's there.
Right.
So I just, not to talk too much about that experience, but had I never gone through that with my mom, it never would have led to those doors. But it also influenced where I am today.
Right.
It actually became an experience that I would say is a master class that I went through in terms of energy and the real energy.
Hmm.
I didn't know it then, but it was the early sparks of what I'm calling now an energy OS system, which is an operating system I now use to help leaders, founders, and entrepreneurs stay energized, make progress, and thrive with optimism,
Wow.
even when life punches us straight in the gut.
Yeah. Yeah, which happens to all of us. And sometimes we think we're unique when it happens, but it turns out we're all going
Nope.
through one, and we go through multiple through our lives. And sometimes we're able to handle them better than others, depending on
Right.
where we're at in our life and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
Something that you mentioned, and I felt it a little bit in my coma. My body wouldn't work. I'm sedated, but I could still hear people. But to people in the room, I'm out. They're telling everybody I'm out. I can't hear anything. He won't remember any of this. I remember being there, and it's really strange. And obviously, this is nowhere near what your mom was going through. But the
Yep.
idea, like my sister's godmother has Parkinson's, and she was like on an Olympic volleyball team. You know what I mean? And it's just, you have to remember that the vessel might be damaged or being affected, but it's not the soul. The soul is in there. It's as vibrant. It's wanting to communicate. And that's one of the scariest things is when you can't speak for yourself.
Right.
Everyone's making decisions for you. So that was super cool that you were able to make it so she was part of the conversation. She felt some sort of control. That is amazing that you came up with that tool. And that's such a good
It
idea.
was just, between that boogie board and those memories, like being able to have that record and elevating, and then, just so much of the world, right, Cam, talks about vision, right?
Yeah.
Vision and then action being the key piece of the puzzle. The bigger piece that's even more valuable than action is the resilience required to keep going.
Yeah. Yes. Well said. And yeah, that's perfect. And how would you say that well, I would say, how would you say that you got through it? And what tools that you used or what paddle did you use? But it sounds like you just kind of just push forward. Was there ever a time where you felt like a victim in it at all? And then you said, no, 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 I have to change my mind here. Like I have to push forward. I have to be there for my mom, or I have to push forward, be there for my family.
I will level set that answer by saying that we were incredibly lucky through this experience also, right?
Yeah.
My parents went to college in a small town in southwestern Illinois,
Okay.
and they had an incredible family friend who could come through that year and helped my dad out, helped my mom out.
That's
So
amazing.
we didn't need to put her in a care situation. That's an
Yeah.
incredible thread that I feel so many people, whether it's I have friends whose, parents have early onset dementia. I have other, you know, friends who have parents that are going through difficult situations. Your the Parkinson situation, Cam, you mentioned a few minutes ago.
Yeah.
We were extremely lucky that we had that built-in caretaker
Yeah.
that come into play. So, I'm not telling anyone to go out and, buy a lottery ticket necessarily, but that's a lottery ticket that's not about the money. It's about the support that you get and the way that your system allows you to move forward.
Yeah.
I've equated that in what I do now, though. I actually really love to influence people to assemble a board of advisors. And
Mm,
that's different than a board of advisors. If you're running a corporation, This is a personal board of advisors who are people who have known you. They're not someone you met, 6 weeks ago necessarily. They're
Right.
people who have known you, the core of what drives you for years, whether they're people you grew up with as a neighbor, they're people you went to high school or college with.
Right.
You don't need too many of them. I think maybe 4 is enough. It's probably the sweet spot.
Yeah.
But these are the people who can help validate that you're moving in the right direction.
Yeah.
And, you also, it's about that accountability piece of it, right?
Yeah.
You owe
Yeah.
them an update on a frequent basis. As
Mhm.
males in the world, I don't think we get enough credit or have enough influence to actually communicate. It opens up the doors to communicate and find that support in the world when you need it. But it
Yep.
also, I recommend actually pairing it with, for those board of advisors that you have, it shouldn't be the heaviest lift in the world, but write an annual report for them every year that talks about what you achieved towards your goals this year and then where you're looking to go in the future. And it's not just about a business career. It's about that
Right.
holistic nature of where you're going to make sure that you're marching in the same direction. Uh, one one tool that I've found incredibly valuable in my own journey is called Ikigai. And
Ikigai.
Cam, I'm not sure if you've had other guests talk about this,
No.
but it equates to the Japanese reason, the Japanese way of explaining the reason for being. And it
Okay.
ties together 4 components: what you're good at, what you love, what the world needs, and what you can get paid for. And it's
Ah,
such an interesting exercise to sit in the center of what's deeply inside of each of ourselves.
wow.
And when we march on that path to what's deeply seated in the middle of us, and I'm someone who, I'm not religious necessarily, but I believe in the spiritual nature of how that operates.
Okay.
When you sit in the center of yourself, that is the roadmap. When you keep marching, you can
Mhm.
find that path to elevation. You can find that path to success. And then more acutely in my Scale Smarter Energy OS system, I like to bring in a complementary tool called an Odyssey plan.
Okay,
And
what's
Cam,
that?
I think, based on your own journey, this is kind of interesting as well. It looks 5 to 10 years in the future,
Okay.
but it lays things out in 3 paths. The first path to consider is the path that you're on. You just keep trudging ahead on that one and you
Okay.
don't change. The second path is the first path just gets obliterated. What's the alternative?
Okay.
And then the third is the playful one, the no limitations, no constraints. If you don't have financial obligation, you don't have family obligation, you don't have, any other obligations,
Okay.
that's where you would be going.
Very
And
cool.
when you work with the Ikigai, the center of what drives you, and then that forward vision, typically I see it doesn't equate into either being path A, B, or C.
Mhm.
It turns into some amalgamation of the 3,
Yeah.
and it gives a roadmap for the smaller steps that are required to get there.
Yeah.
I love to think in the framework, no matter where we're going in life, imagine each of us should imagine that we're Michelangelo, the famous Italian sculptor,
Okay.
and you just in life have a 2-ton block of marble dropped in front of you.
Mhm.
Imagine how many thousands, hundreds of thousands of chisel marks that takes to build that simple block of marble
Yeah.
into a beautiful statue. And if you can build that roadmap, the smaller steps that get you there, that can elevate you. And
Yeah.
I don't want to layer on another tool here. One of the simplest tools that I've actually seen to keep people resilient in their own head, go to a convenience store, buy a tiny little pocket-sized 99-cent notebook, write small wins on the front of it, and keep that in your back pocket. And then every time you do something or you succeed, jot that down in that notebook. We've got notes apps on our phones. You can do the same thing.
Right.
But whenever you have a small win, we all have small wins, write it down. so that you can refer back to it when you start to feel that allure of darkness or that allure of negativity coming into
Yeah.
play. Human nature, the way the human psyche works, we love to emphasize the negative, the
Hmm.
challenges facing consistently. If we can remind ourselves that we're actually succeeding and chipping away in small areas,
Hmm.
that's that boulder that starts to roll down the hill.
That's
Or if
such a
you
good
could
point.
or if you could roll a boulder up a hill, that's actually a better way to view it.
Yeah. Man, that's really, really well said. Because I think a lot of times when I've set goals, at least in the past, I make them too big. And it
Yeah,
kind of paralyzes me before I can even get it. So you're saying like, and what I had to do is break it down into small steps. And it literally
right.
started with me like learning how to walk again. The first day we are just walking to the street. The second day
Yep,
we're walking to the neighbor's driveway. The third day we're walking to the next driveway, and it was a progressive thing.
right.
And sometimes it can, you know, I don't know about you, but when I set goals and then I'm really excited to the whole thing, and then the first step doesn't seem big enough, I tend to, I don't know, combine three into one and be like, okay, that's the magic number. I'm gonna keep it going. But you're right, it just takes
Yep.
little bits, little chisels, and you don't need anyone else's permission. We
It
wait,
it
we
helps
wait
it
for
it
someone.
helps it helps to have a cheerleader. It helps to have a battery pack in your back pocket that keeps you going and recharges you when you need. I mean,
Yeah.
no matter where any of us are coming from, and I love to meet my coaching clients where they are. It's not about
Hmm.
where I am. That's another difference of the way that our conversations are architected. Um, it's about knowing that we can do it alone, but when you have that person who can keep you accountable and moving forward, whether it's the board of advisors, whether it's a coach like myself, and I talk about energy a lot, right?
Yeah.
I mentioned that earlier. People usually think I'm going to tell them to put solar panels on their house or drink more water or hop on the Peloton 5 days a week and hit the gym,
Yeah.
right? That's not what it's about. It's about the fact that I help push people towards that resilience,
Yeah.
right? And help march ahead and not get distracted, lean too far to the left or the right, stay marching ahead. The other piece of it that I think is really important, Cam, is this concept of grace.
Mm.
And I like to think about grace. It originates from a religious perspective. I actually like to untether it from the religious world because I
Hmm.
think it's something the world needs more of today. We see the increase nature through digital devices, social media, of instant gratification. It's the dopamine hit after dopamine hit after dopamine hit.
Yeah.
If we give ourselves more space and silence and give ourselves more grace, give the people around us more grace and the wider world more grace, it just helps everybody. It helps lift all of the oceans around us. I mean, how
Yeah.
many times have I seen, especially since COVID, a challenge we all went through on a global footprint a few years ago? How often do you see people being so much more aggravated, driving a car,
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
instance? People are so short these days, and I
Mhm.
think grace is grace is the thing that helps us elevate. And it's
Yeah.
not about, again, the religious context of it. It's about the applicability that comes by giving ourselves more grace to start, and then it envelops and ripples outward to the people around us in the wider world.
I agree. I don't know if you've ever tried to do it, but go out into the world and give other people grace, but you're not
Yep.
giving it to yourself. You're almost creating this like inner turmoil, like I'm
Right.
giving grace to other people. And I think there's something in the back of our head, like you're waiting for someone else to give it to you for some reason. But
No.
you're right. It starts with you. And just pausing sometimes, like you said, because we're on our phones, we're doing so much during the day, our brains are cranking, cranking, cranking. I have to consciously make sure I sit myself down and I slow it down. And if I
Right.
slow it down, I'm not as panicked. And I didn't even realize I was panicked, but it's just like grinding and going and going and going. And yes, I have PTSD. So I have to like differentiate what am I being triggered here and all that kind of stuff. But yeah,
Right.
that's amazing.
Well, I have to say, not to go back to the situation with my mom and how that cracked me open, sort of. All in the corporate career, I was in a 20-year nonlinear corporate marketing career. I worked everywhere from global companies like Microsoft and Akamai Technologies to venture capital backed startups. When that happens, all the frameworks, all the strategy decks, all the ambition, they really mean nothing when you're sitting next to someone you love, watching them lose their ability to live in the world, right?
Yeah.
So through that, I felt my own personal battery never charged past, let's say, 40%.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
Yeah.
when I realized most of us are trying to live lives on borrowed energy,
Yeah.
we're plugged into everyone else's expectations or our view of what everyone else's expectations are, whether it's our company,
Hmm.
our family, our social media highlight reel. But we never stop to ask, where is my own outlet? And that's where the metaphor hit me.
Yeah.
I'm the energy coach, but really I'm the guy who helps people find their cord and the power source again.
Yeah.
And it's built around, three pillars. It's input, what fuels you,
Okay.
output, where your energy compounds, and then recovery, how
Recovery.
you reset your system.
Yeah.
And just like any good operating system, if one part crashes, the whole thing breaks or slows down.
Yeah.
And I tell clients all the time, energy debt always comes due. When you
Yeah.
can skip, or rather, when you skip rest, skip reflection, and skip your joy, the bill will show up eventually, and it could be in the form of resentment, it could be in the form of exhaustion, or total collapse of purpose.
Yeah.
And that's not a system you can out hustle. It's a
Yeah.
fundamentally unbalanced place to come from.
Yeah. Now you just mentioned resentment, and we've talked about that quite a bit, and I went through a lot of it. Any suggestions or advice on how to shift a resentment into or letting it go? I mean, we all say it's like carrying a weight,
Yep.
or drinking poison and expecting the other person to die, but it's easily said, to be like, just let it go. I found myself clinging to resentments because, in a way, I don't know, it gave me a sense of control, which was false. You know what I mean? If
Mm.
I'm feeling bad, I'm gonna get
Yep.
angry at this one person because I feel like they're the one person I can get angry at, and I'll kind of
Right.
yell at them or whatever in my head. But when I'm doing that, I'm sacrificing my own, I don't know, mentality, if you will. I'm kind of giving it
Yep.
over. I'm leaning into the dark side. Like I'm actually going into it. Think I can control it. Even when I work out, I've talked about so many times. If I want to listen to music that's kind of like aggressive and energizing, like and I've done a lot of analyzing on it because it's like
Yeah.
every time it happens, I come out and I'm not feeling great. You know what I mean?
Right.
It rolls over into the rest of my day. I've tried to fight it. I'm that stubborn guy, and I've just had to
Yeah.
submit that although it's small, it matters,
Right.
and I need to make sure that I am putting myself in the best situations. And that's not always easy to do because you want to do stuff.
Right.
But with trial and error, you start figuring out, okay, if I go around driving like an a-hole, honking at everybody, riding everyone's butt, it's not
Right.
me taking control of my day. It's actually me getting so worked up that
Yep.
wherever I show up, it's going to be there, you know?
Right.
Um,
Well, and that's actually that's where make your own glass half full comes from, right? It's not about self-help gimmicks. It's a survival guide rather, that leverages optimism. And I've actually been asked many times after it was published last year, how did you write a book about optimism after everything that I've been through?
right.
And I honestly say optimism isn't about being happy, it's about being ready, right? It's not a
Indeed.
mood, it's a muscle. And it's the way that I learned to learn, because you can't control, let's say, the storm,
Yep.
but you can build your own umbrella factory,
I
right?
love, yeah. Yeah.
Um, and I like to talk. It's also not about toxic optimism. We can go too far down that side. It's about empowered optimism,
That,
optimism that's rooted in autonomy, not not
uh,
not optimistic delusion.
Right. Because you see a lot of that nowadays. It's like a guy yelling at you online saying, "You're not enough. You need to be doing this. You should be making this money. You should be doing that." That's not coaching. That's me feeling ashamed. You know what I mean? And trying to kick me in the butt. But that's not going to last long. That's not true motivation. It's like the idea of I need to get something done now and I'm willing to do something extreme, but I doubt that it's something that would be healthy to continue your life
Right.
with. Yeah.
Well, I think it's called make your own glass half full because one of the most ubiquitous ways people in this world are described is either as a glass half full or a
Hmm.
glass half empty mentality.
Right.
But the thing that the glass half full crowd often forgets is the most important part. And even the glass half empty, you're the one holding the glass. You can refill it. You can pick up the pitcher.
Yeah.
You can even change what's in that glass, I would argue. And when
Yeah.
you take back that ownership, that autonomy, that's when the key turns into transformation.
I love that. So instead of seeing something as black or white, it's like realizing there's other angles, other colors, and all that kind of stuff, and you can take control
Right.
of certain things. And I'm sure you talk about controllables and uncontrollables, the idea that, if we're worried about things we can't control,
Yep.
there's no solution in there. But if you look at the things you can control and the small steps or chisel marks you can make, boom, you're moving in the right direction. Now,
I have to say, next to my desk on the wall outside of the concert posters that I have, because music is what drives me,
yeah,
I have How to Stop Worrying About What Other People Think and a guide to that over here. In the middle, I have Brene Brown's 10 guideposts for wholehearted living. And
nice.
then I actually have the only visualization that showed up in my book that comes from Tim Urban of Wait But Why, which is a fantastic stick figure blog in the world. I won't champion that, but it's this incredibly powerful visualization of what I call life paths.
Okay.
It's got a, you know, and I'll share this. We can put this maybe in the show notes or something like that.
Okay.
It has today in the middle, and then you've got a time period of you're born and before today, and then there's after today. It's all these wiggly lines. Before today, you've got one green wiggly line and a bunch of black lines that didn't end up happening. Today's again in the middle, and then you have an infinite number of wiggly green lines going off into the future. The
Yeah.
non-linearity piece of it, that's truly where resilience is the piece that comes into play.
Yeah. Absolutely. And for one of our listeners or whoever's listening out there right now who really finds himself in a dark spot right now, um it could be going through something in life or just depression, whatever it may be. What would you say to that person? What's the first step they could take or suggestion you would give them?
I mean, outside of some of the other things that I've mentioned, just take 5 minutes and sit there and write down a quick list on a post-it note or a piece of paper, divide it in two, write down a couple things that are energy boosters that help
Hmm.
elevate you, and then things that are energy drainers. And I'm not
uh,
saying you have to get rid of the energy drainers immediately. Maybe that's long-term transformational work to do.
right.
Take a couple of those energy boosters and do them. Is it hydration, right? Is it getting a giant glass of water and drinking it? Is it taking a walk?
Right.
Getting 5 minutes of fresh air? Is it putting on the a song that pumps you up?
Right.
Is it doing something kind for someone else, a place of gratitude?
Yeah.
Those are super simple, achievable ways to help lift out of that encompassed darkness that is
Yeah.
so alluring and really drag us down.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
It's
also, I mean, one thing, today's a rainy day here in Boston.
Mhm.
I know always that sun is still behind the clouds. No matter how many days of darkness come, eventually that sun is going to show up again. And I use an analogy that imagine you wake up in a completely dark room.
Okay.
You don't know where the light switch is. You don't know how to turn a light on. It's not plugged in. That's that's where I like to come in and say, I'm going to help guide your hand, not just to flip the light switch, but to find the plug
Hmm.
in the darkness, and then I will eventually help you get to the place where it plugs in. Right.
That,
So
yeah.
that's where those accountability partners come into play. That's the difference in terms of success and just, elevating out of those holes that we all fall into.
Yeah, I like that. You're not stepping in to fix it for them. You're
Right.
stepping in to kind of guide the way, and that I think that's really important. That's really well said because a lot of times I think we don't want help because we don't want to hand it all over. You know,
Mhm.
we don't want someone coming in and taking control of our lives and telling us this is what you're doing right, this is what you're doing wrong, and this sort of stuff. Compared to someone grabbing your hand and be like, "Hey, you're awesome.
Right.
There's a couple things we could maybe work on if you're open to it,
Yep.
but you're killing it right now. The fact that we're even talking is amazing. You know what I mean? And I don't think,
Right.
like you said, we don't let ourselves celebrate those victories along the way. I was guilty of this until I
Yep.
thought I had reached a point where I was allowed to say, because I had so much shame on me, right? But
Right.
you have to account for the action that you're taking because you are being heroic. And I think it's so cool that, all right, first off, you mentioned something that all around you, you have things that motivate you and kind of keep you centered and all that kind of stuff. And you've
Right.
written a book about this. So this shows that this is like an actionable thing. It isn't something you just memorize and like save in your mind. It's like on a daily basis, you're touching it, you're feeling it,
Yep.
you're reminding yourself. And it's kind of, and it's a good way to not get caught up in the world, especially for longer than 48 hours or 24 hours, because I don't know about you. I can start the week on Monday and all of a sudden Friday shows up. I'm like, what happened? so, so, so it's like it's really important to kind of slow down and just, it makes such a difference. Just 5 minutes, just
Right.
5 minutes. And I think sometimes we say 5 minutes is, I'll watch TV for 5 minutes. That's not it.
Right.
That's not it. It's not
Well,
about, yeah.
it's Cam, I look at it as a simple equation actually. And if I had a whiteboard, I would write energy first, then it would be an arrow to clarity, and
Uh,
then the arrow goes to progress. And if you skip the first one, the first two, the subsequent ones crumble.
I like that.
Every day I meet founders who brag about running on 4 hours of sleep. I tell them that's not resilience, that's reckless optimism or just recklessness. You can't lead
Yeah.
if you're leaking energy.
That's so true. So true. And it's funny that, yeah, that's what we kind of like. That's the masculine, here I go. I only have to work, or, I work 16 hours a day. I sleep 4, all that kind of stuff. And it's not sustainable, like you said. And it gives a false impression to people who are trying to get through something, because you, whatever battle you're in, although it's unique to you, it is as worthy or as important as anybody else's. If you are struggling with something, we love you enough to tell you that we were struggling with something for a long, long time. And we had to, at some point, make some sort of change because the path and the tools that we had weren't working.
Right.
So it's scary to step out into that darkness, like you were talking about before. But sometimes it's really, I've said it before, but fear is sometimes it looks a mile wide and,
Yep.
it like an ocean that's a mile wide and all that kind of stuff. And then you take your first step into it and it's 2 inches deep.
Right.
So it's like this
Well,
false impression.
I have a fantastically creative person named Pejman Milani that I'm a big fan of, who's in Austin, Texas. He's a teacher. He takes some of these complex ideas and really equates them down into a fun, cartoonish way. One of his favorite ones that I love to go back to, it's a two sides of a canyon, right? And you're over on one side with a bow and arrow trying to hit a target.
Okay.
And if your target is falling into the canyon and not hitting the bullseye, what do you need to do? You just need to adjust the angle of your bow.
Right.
The other thing that's incredible to think about, imagine an airplane, say, that's flying from LA to New York.
Okay.
If you simply change the direction of that flight by 1 or 2 or 3 degrees,
Mm-hmm.
it completely doesn't take you to New York. It'll take you maybe to Hartford. It'll take you to Philadelphia.
Yeah.
It's not about big shifts to change the momentum. It's little adjustments that get them there. And the other piece that I love to get into, you are no one listening here. You are not your circumstances.
Yes.
You are your choices inside of them. I think all of us face that place in life that absolutely puts us up a creek with no paddle, no plan, maybe a hole in the boat, no signal,
Right.
but you can always build your own. Sometimes I think, Cam, you and I would agree that paddle looks like therapy.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's simply setting a boundary or saying no to something that's been enabling us.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's honestly letting yourself rest without guilt.
Hmm.
Um, but it's all about sort of the fully optimized human mindset, right? Where you integrate purpose, play, and progress to live in forward motion.
Yeah.
Because the growth isn't to just survive, let's say, the creek, it's to come back stronger. And,
Yes.
ultimately then you can help other people build their boat as well.
Yeah. I love that. And it works. For some reason, if you go through something and you decide, I'm not going to give up on this, and you prove to
Yeah.
yourself that you don't, you're able to help people. You're able to be empathetic to people who are going through something, and able just to sit with them, not tell them what to do, just sit with them in the ministry of presence, and let them know they're not alone. And like, I see you and I'm proud of you and you're doing great, no matter what. Because
Right.
we, in my opinion, we were made and born imperfect beings. And somewhere along the line, especially in the West, we were told that our lives are supposed to be perfect. They're not. So if an imperfect being is trying to be perfect, it'll cause inner turmoil because you're never going to achieve it. So it's like
Right.
once you let that grace set in and you're like,
Yeah.
oh, I don't have to be something to be loved or to be worthy. I can just be me. And then all
Right.
of a sudden you like find yourself in the center of it, like you were talking about. You're able to get quiet with yourself and be
Yeah.
happy and realize that it like, Jim Carrey said something one time. He's like, I wish everyone had $1 million so they could get everything they possibly want to realize that it won't make you happy. You know? So,
Yep.
so
Well, Cam, you're saying that we're never perfect as humans, but ultimately in this world, nothing is ever perfect.
exactly.
Nothing
Exactly.
is ever done perfect. We live through the imperfections, and the warts are what makes the scars are what make us beautiful.
Yeah, I agree.
And that's why other people value us, right? I would even argue that helps, that understanding that the person who looks different than me and comes from a different background, they're incredible because of that unique path that they've been on. Everyone listening here has been on an incredibly unique path.
Yeah.
Account for what you've done. Don't languish in it. Therapy can help with that.
Yeah.
But use that as what fuels you to move forward because we only get better over time if we just keep going, no matter how rough the water might be. But that water's still going to move whether we want it or not.
Right. Yeah. The race definitely isn't one in a day. It's a consistent, like, I love the marble analogy. That's so great. The chipping that it took to, carve out, what is it, Michelangelo? No.
Michelangelo. Yep.
Yeah.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, that's such a good point. And the idea that beyond that is the idea that someone could see the sculpture before even the first chip, but knows that it starts here, know that it goes
Right.
here. No one else
Yep.
can see it. It's kind of like when you probably started doing your book and walking out into this genre on your own. Sometimes people can't see it for you. And then so you walk into the darkness and you find your tribe in there because you're living authentically to yourself. And
Right.
people gravitate to that. They're like, I have that same issue, or I want to learn about that. Here's my person, compared to convincing people who know you before that this is where I'm going because they can't see it.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I've had friends, going back to that board of advisors idea, who over the last couple years who I've caught up with, and they come back to me and they'll go, "Oh, you've actually done this.
Yeah.
You've actually made this change. I can
Yeah.
see you talked about this. You didn't just talk about it. You actually did it." And that's
Yeah.
ahead of me doing my check-in to tell them on what I've been working on or where I've been going. And that's when you're like, "Oh, I am moving in the right direction.
Yeah. Yeah. And like to them, you can tell when they look at you, you have changed because you see
Yep.
it in their eyes. They're like, huh. And you're like, I
Yeah.
told you. I told you I was going to
Like it
do it.
did, but I had to unlock that in myself, right?
Yeah.
That's where it starts.
Hmm.
I've talked with countless people, not to lean too far into the therapy world, but about therapy and how that's valuable. I also
Yep.
look at therapy as the fully optimized human actually has a therapist, and 99% of the people in the world can't have these three things concurrently.
Right.
You've got a therapist who's helping for resolving things that happened in the past.
Hmm.
You have a mentor who's sitting with you in your day to day, what you're focused on world. And then you have a coach. And that's the role that I love to fill, that
Yeah.
helps keep you marching ahead forward. That's
Wow.
the fully optimized human. Most of us don't have time or financial infrastructure to
Right.
have those three things concurrently, but start with one of them
Yeah.
and it starts to unlock the other doors.
Yeah. Well said. And to anyone out there who would be willing to get a coach or maybe wants to reach out to you, what would be the best way to do that?
Yeah. You can find me at adamwbarney.com. Make sure that W is in there. That's key to my difference in the world. Or you can grab the book at makeyourown glasshalffull.com, or head to any of the major platforms out there. I also host my own podcast that I launched this year. Talk about something that people have been telling me to do for 15 years and I never actually did.
Yeah.
That's called Is Anything Real in Paid Advertising? It goes back to my corporate career, but it's not based on just talking about advertising. It's about just telling fun stories about how this world keeps evolving. So we've
Cool.
got some incredible people that have come through those doors. And if you want to start rebuilding your energy today, I've got a free energy boost blueprint, because this isn't about self-help, it's about safe self-sustainability, Cam.
Yeah, absolutely. And the last question, and I think we've talked about it a little bit before, but like the idea that, you know, I am so guilty of being the person, okay, new year, new life, I'm going to lose the weight. And then February comes and I haven't been to the gym in the last couple of weeks. So there's a difference between like getting started and then sustaining. And I know you
Yeah.
talked about small steps and all that kind of stuff, but is there anything else that you would advise anyone out there about in those moments where, you're like, I don't know if I want to keep going? What comes to mind?
Ah, don't make your to-do list too long on a day-to-day basis. That's the simplest way. Your to-do list shouldn't be 20 things. It should be three things that are marching towards those smaller steps that get to that bigger shift.
Yeah.
And also, grace comes back into play. If you don't get one or two of those things done in the day,
Hmm.
give yourself that grace, punt them to the next day. If it starts happening a couple days in a row, reevaluate whether the things that are on that list are actually the things that are moving the needle and that you want to be focused on. And maybe they're not, or maybe there's some self-led block up that's not allowing you to do them. But keep it simple.
I, l-
It's not about it's not it, that's the simplest way I would describe it.
yeah, I need to work on that because I think a lot of people might relate to this. They write a list that's too long, and then they get to the end of the day and they're like, I didn't do it. Although you've gotten like 5 things done, it's because you didn't get the 8 things on the list done. You're like, oh, I didn't,
Right.
I didn't do well today, but that's not
Well,
real. And
and then you pull out that small wins notebook, right? And you write down the things that you got done every day,
I love
right?
it.
So
That's
that
so
builds in
important.
that builds in a different habit, and honestly, one other thing that's very easy to do, Cam, put put those goals in front of you. Put
Yeah.
print them out, put them up on the wall, look at them consistently. How
Yeah.
many times have you seen people, to make a change, write something in lipstick on the mirror in the bathroom just so
Uh,
that they see it every day? The constant visual reminder is, outside of the digital devices that we have, all the notifications, a constant visual reminder that's physically in front of you
yeah.
is incredibly valuable.
So you think you're saying it almost like helps reprogram your brain like
Yeah.
reorient it. Like, we're
Right.
not going to think about this. We're looking right at this. We're looking right at this. This is the direction we're going. And I think
Right.
that that's amazing.
Exactly.
Well, Adam, this has been absolutely amazing. You've put so many gold nuggets in here that's just been beautiful. Thank you so much for blessing us with your presence. I advise anyone out there to go after Adam W. Barney. Make sure you put the W in, okay, for the namesake. It's very important. So reach out to this individual, grab the book. Let's learn as much as we can. If we could put some nice reviews for Adam, that would be great too. So let's work as a team. And if anything, Adam, just again, thank you so much for opening up, being vulnerable, sharing the bits and pieces that you learned. I know it's not easy, but it does matter, and we greatly appreciate it.
It's a little bit fun also, Cam.
Yeah,
So that's the other part. When we start to flex those muscles, things get easier over time.
yeah,
Keep
yeah.
paddling, right?
Yeah, got to keep paddling. And then when you get out, maybe turn back and see if there's anyone else who's struggling. And I don't know, just by pulling that next person out, it really gives purpose to what you went through, for me at least.
Once you know how to paddle, you can navigate to the side of the creek and pick different people up, right? And bring
Yep.
them in your boat with
Yep.
you.
Exactly. And they might need different tools. So, everyone's in different situations. And I just think that we're stronger together, and we're growing. And for anyone
Mm.
out there thinking it, you are not alone. You are not unique in your misery. There are other people going through it, and you are going to make a change and break through thanks to Adam. All right, buddy. Thank
Awesome.
you so much.
Thank you, Cam.
Thanks for tuning in to Shit Creek Survivors. If this episode gave you hope or made you think, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button, share it with a friend who needs a little light, and leave us a quick review so more people can find the show. I'm your host, Cameron McKay, and until next time, keep paddling, y'all.